Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Instinct. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, this involves a kidnapping case. A boy named Robbie is kidnapped, and the thing is, what makes this case very complicated is because there are two very mad sides. There's the father side, Will, and then there's the grandparent side of things, because there's a whole complicated thing because Will is suspected to have killed their daughter years ago, Mimi, and they've always kind of held on to that, so it's always kind of like, okay, that's kind of a negative against him, so it is heated, because it's a heated custody battle. The parents are saying this and that about Will, but Will is like this and that, because he's trying to say, like, they want to say that I'm the reason why Mimi died, but, like, they weren't willing to see that she was depressed, because apparently, like, they're saying, like, oh, because the whole thing about Will, like, his whole anger issues and everything, plus he used drugs, that's actually how him and Mimi met. They actually met through rehab, but, it's like those are little facts that her parents don't really talk about, because they just went to church to kind of, like, that was their way of kind of dealing with everything. Side note, interesting things, the actor who plays the grandfather, I've seen him in so many things. I can't pinpoint one specific thing because he's just one of those actors you see him pop up in so much stuff. The actor who plays Will, I want to say that's one of Josh Brolin's kids, if I remember correctly. I think I know that because I looked up one of his other kids, Eden Brolin, just because she played Charlie in a show that I really like called Beyond. I didn't even know she was one of Josh Brolin's kids until I looked her up. I was like, holy crap. And then I found out that, because I'd seen her brother in many different things before, and then like I said, not unless I'm mistaken him from a different actor, but I'm pretty sure that's her brother. I could be 100% wrong. But nevertheless, the actor who plays Will, I've seen him in, like, the following. I think the most recent thing will probably be Blind Spot, because his character's popped in and out of Blind Spot over the years. But nevertheless, what already makes this a very complicated case, because there's even something Jasmine brought up, because obviously Lizzie's kind of on edge in this entire case, and Jasmine points out to Dylan to kind of look after her, because even the most veteran, like, cops get a little uneasy on cases that involve kids. It hits a little too close to home in certain regard. And obviously you can tell, like, Lizzie's just kind of on edge, the way she's kind of snappy, kind of getting pissed at Harris because of the way he's dressed. Even Jasmine later on tell him, like, put some pants on. He's like, because he kind of jumped on the crime scene immediately because he was nearby an area he was biking, so he came here immediately because it's a missing kid situation. So but what was interesting, and I like Dylan kind of put it into perspective of, like, Lizzie, you need to stay calm, because there's a lot of people that's going to be on this case panicking all around, so that's why you, more so than anyone, need to be kind of calm and composed so that we can do this. And she's like, you're right. And so for that sake, she's letting Dylan lead the investigation. He's like, what, really? And she's like, yes, you're the boss in this case. He's like, I'm the boss. It's like, kind of like, don't let it go to your head. But it's like, we need your expertise. We need your superpowers. It's like, you need my superpowers. She's like, oh my God, I'm already going to regret this. So, like I said, the interesting back and forth between the parents, because obviously it seems like the parents had passports and tickets to Cuba. They're trying to say, like, oh, so that their grandson can learn about their heritage, but and because obviously Will stepped away from the house, like, for like 30 to 45 minutes. He was meeting up with somebody who was, like, kind of being like, I think it's someone with who he was a sponsor to someone, and it's like, they were kind of about to have an episode, but they canceled, like, the whole meeting, and he got bleached, and it was a whole thing of him being going, like, 30, 45 minutes left his son alone, so that's an issue in itself. Then later on, it's like, okay, so, because the thing is, like, everything's pointed towards Will potentially being the big target, but at the same, being the one responsible, but then Lizzie and Dylan go visit the judge, and it seems like maybe the grandparents might have got involved, because the grandfather might have gotten the idea that, like, oh, like, he might have been under the impression, like, oh, the father gets, custody potentially. So, and he was kind of saying, like, there's going to be blood and it's going to be on your hands, which Lizzie torrented that judge through the episode, being like, how could you not look at this as a threat? But obviously the judge had her reasonings behind it. It's like, that's a person by person case basis, I think, of, like, whether or not you think the judge handled everything poorly. I can see where Lizzie's coming from, but I think at the same time Lizzie was just kind of tearing into her. Dylan wasn't as, kind of interface about it. But it's actually kind of interesting because we learned from Lizzie, because Dylan finally got it out of her, basically she was in a similar case in her own right, that basically when she was younger her mom kind of got brought up to court because basically she left her daughters alone for a while when Lizzy was trying to fix a hot dog for her sister. A hand towel or something caught on fire, neighbor found out, called the cops, like it turned into a whole thing, and it's just kind of like a useless judge wasn't really trying to understand the circumstances, so that's why she kind of gets nitpicky about this type of situation. So then there's stuff like, because obviously, Ryan is, talking to Will after he had to stop Will from attacking the grandfather because the grandfather had a truck that had blood in the back, but the blood was Robbie's. I don't actually remember them. They probably explained that, and I just don't remember necessarily. Maybe, well, I guess it makes sense in the grand scheme of things because of what happens later, or maybe, Robbie went there to kind of get some supplies, so that's why his blood was back there. Like I said, I'll get to it soon enough. But I don't remember them explaining that, but maybe they did, and I just kind of missed it. But regardless, there's even stuff that during the interrogation, Will's like, oh yeah, like basically he was paying a babysitter. He didn't have money on it. So it's like, if he paid for cash, that meant he had to step away to go get money and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, so that would kind of prove that, hey, he had nothing to do with Mimi's death. And then like you have Dylan kind of thinking like, okay, maybe we're looking at this situation completely wrong. Maybe we've been looking at it like, we got caught up in the toxicity of this situation. Because even the godparents were kind of talking about, in particular the godfather, is like, yeah, the fact of the matter is it's kind of a toxic situation just because it's like, yeah, they were never really friends with Will. They were friends with Mimi. That's how they knew Will. But at the same time, it's like, they didn't really know even about his anger issues until it came up in court. And then there's the whole situation of like, but then he recognized like how Mimi's parents were just going in on him, trying to basically destroy him. And it's like, it's just a toxic situation. So literally either party could have been involved in this situation, but they were so caught up in the toxicity of the situation. It's like, we're kind of making it seem like it could have been any party. Because that was also the thing too, because obviously with cases like that, more often than not, it's someone close to the child that ends up kidnapping him. In very rare cases, it is a stranger, but it's like, we should be looking to the stranger angle, but maybe not, because everything in the case kind of lend itself to more like, oh, it was someone close by. And so they kind of pieced other things together to basically reveal that it was actually Robbie who kidnapped himself. And I'm like, that's interesting, because he was caught in a situation because he knew what this all meant. He knew what the court date meant, like, and it's a very compromised position to kind of be in, because he didn't want things to kind of be bad. It's just, he's a kid, and he, I'm sure for him it's like, if I can, I want it both ways. I want to be able to be with my grandparents, but I also want to be with my dad. I don't want to be taken away from anybody in that regard. It's actually kind of interesting because that kind of lends itself into Lizzy's story too, because basically Lizzy was in a compromised position of like, her mom was going for a long time. It was like all night, and she lied and said like, oh, we were for our neighbor so-and-so, Mr. Keller or whatever. It's like, oh, that's good. It's like, actually there was no Mr. Keller. We didn't have that neighbor. So she had to come up with a lie to protect her mom, because like, obviously that's what she had to do. But it was a situation where Lizzy was supposed to be in a safe space, but she wasn't, and she had to create her own. She kind of had to, in that case, and that kind of lends itself into showing you who Lizzy is too, because Lizzy kind of had to grow up fast. That was something that got tackled in season 1, because her sister has drinking issues, and that's kind of something that stems from their mom. Their mom kind of was in that same position, so Lizzy had to grow up fast to, like, look after her sister. And we kind of see, well, at least hear about it in this regard as well, of how she had to lie just to try and keep her family together, because she didn't want her family to get split up because of something like that. So, and it's kind of a similar thing in Robbie's case too, basically he ended up getting the daughters of the godparents. They're kind of like pseudo sisters to him, so he kind of orchestrated everything with them. The blood came about because he was trying to get his monkey back cheetah, and ended up bleeding from that situation, because obviously the daughters were covering everything, but it's because they didn't expect things to kind of blow out of proportion the way they did. They were just trying to help out someone that was a friend, who was essentially a brother to them. So of course, so they didn't really, they're kids too, so they don't really understand the grand scheme of everything, but they thought like, oh, we were helping him, and so, I mean, it's not the greatest situation, but at the very least there is, you can understand the mentality of like why they did it, and why Robbie in particular did it, and you can kind of sympathize, and Luckily, when it's all said and done, that's because that was something that was at the like antithesis of this case too. It's like very rarely, because they work homicide, so very rarely do they have to worry about a situation like, okay, our victim is still alive. We're usually getting there after everything's all said and done. Now we get there beforehand, And so luckily, when it's all said and done, they were able to track down and find Robbie. It's actually interesting because Julian actually helped in many different regards, because he compiled a lot of videos and stuff like that. They helped earlier on in the case and stuff like that. He actually kind of made it so like stuff kind of run a little faster for Zach. He's like, oh yeah, like this would actually shave off like 5 hours of me searching through stuff. And it's like, oh, like Julian did a very good job of like compiling the videos and stuff like that. So it helped a lot during this case. And like I said, I think that's the beauty of this too. There is a happy ending. Like, it's a very complicated case. There's still developments that we most likely, as the audience, will never see, because obviously, like, the godparents have to be like the kind of in between. I mean, which they always played that role anyway. But they gotta look after Robbie until like the court really decides everything. But I think going forward, Will and Mimi's parents are going to bridge a lot of that anger, especially because it's like Will had nothing to do with Mimi's death. Whether it was like she fell, whether it was suicide, no one will ever know, but we know that Will wasn't involved. So it's got to, get rid of some of this toxicity that has been built up over all these years. And at the same time, like, build this foundation, kind of regroup as a family, for Robbie's sake, so that, something like this doesn't happen again, to bring back structure to his life, to kind of not make things as weird as chaotic. Because, like I said, he loves both his parents and both his parent and, his dad and his grandparents. So, so like I said, there is this heartwarming, beautiful end to it all in that case. I also love the whole thing with Lizzy and Julian, because for Lizzy, once again, it's that whole thing of like, I don't really know you enough, because it's like, okay, like, you probably, where do you actually live? And he's like, oh no, I really live here in this hotel. She's like, no, you don't. I bet you got like this secret base full of like high-tech stuff, which technically he did till someone broke in. And she's like, grenade launchers or something like that. He's like, I don't deal with arms. She's like, how do I really know? How do I know that you're a good person? And when it's all said and done, it's like, thanks to Julian, they were kind of able to help solve this case and everything. So she's like, you kind of let it show and let it slip. You are a good guy. He is like, I am today. That statement in itself like speaks volumes, because he is a CIA agent. And that's the thing of like, it all comes down to perspective, because like, what's good in someone else's eyes could be bad in another's. And I think it also could stem from the fact is, I'm sure as a CIA agent, there's been plenty of things that he does and has done in the past that he does not like. I mean, there are deadly and like more sad aspects to that job that probably chip away at you a little bit, that you don't really want to share with people. So there's that side of things. So like, to me, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I'm a good person. But him saying today, to me, that kind of adds like a little dark spin to being like, yeah, but because that all comes, like I said, comes down to perspective, So, but Lizzie's kind of happy with that response, because she's like, you're a good guy. But it's like, maybe that's foreshadowing some stuff coming out about Julian and his very not so good side. Maybe that's going to end up catching up to him while he's working at the NYPD. Maybe some stuff about his CIA days comes out. It's like, wait, he's a CIA agent. Then Jasmine's like, wait, you both knew, you didn't tell me anything? Could be potentially an element to that going forward. But like I said, that's just me throwing out there's potential foreshadowing. So it is interesting, because even Lizzy kind of comments on how crazy it is that, like, because obviously she had to be calm, cool, and Dylan had to be calm, cool, and collected, but she could tell, like, you weren't. Like, the fact of the matter is, I have my own issues, and obviously I was acting a little, understandably, but she also talks about the fact is that Dylan acted cool and collected, but he wasn't, because it's like, let's not forget, literally at the same time they're looking for a missing child, him and Andy are in the process of adopting, so it's like, of course, it's going to hit in the wrong way, because she's like, obviously your eyes already, like, you're blinking a lot more, like, he wasn't 100, like, little key signs showing that she's very good at analyzing people, and when it's all said and done, she's back to being the boss again. So order has been restored in a certain regard when we actually think about that. So like I said, overall the episode, is kind of a sad circumstances, but it does have a silver lining, kind of a good ending, kind of like it all works out in the end, which you kind of have to put an asterisk beside that, because it's still being worked out, but at least where things are now, things are good and working to be better, so that's the beauty of this situation. I also love how everything kind of works out for Andy and Dylan, because it turns out the lady that's working for him, that he was trying to get her in a different position, at the bar and everything, and it turns out wait, she's leaving, but you find out the reason why she's leaving is because she's pregnant, she's giving her baby up for adoption, and it's just kind of like, and it's like, I know you don't typically believe, like, you know, like there's magic in all of this, but there is, and it's just like the serendipity behind it is beautifully magical in that regard, and it's just kind of like they went searching for their baby, and the baby, their future baby, is a lot closer to home than they would have thought. So I just thought that was kind of neatly done. I even love like Dylan writing, you know, the entire episode he's working on a speech, and I love when he says it, and he's kind of like, all right, now I got to work on mine. I was like, because yours was so much better, I have to make mine better now. Because it's so beautiful, the whole thing. It's a sentiment that kind of came from the whole Lizzie thing of like a safe space. Like our baby will never have to worry about it because our baby will always have a safe space with you, just like my safe space is with you as well, you know. And so it's just the beauty of this family, you know. So I just thought that was all kind of neat, and I'm interested to kind of see the continuation of this adoption process. Obviously Lizzy and Julian, where their story ends up taking, especially because it's like she was like, oh yeah, you never actually told me why exactly you're working at the precinct and everything like that. It's like, once again, he hasn't informed her about, like, because we still haven't circled back to that, because that's still something we got to go back to, is like who the dude is that came after Julian initially at the beginning of the season, like where that's going to go, you know. Uncovering that person's identity is still something he's working on, while he's also not telling Lizzie, while they're also having this relationship behind Jasmine's back, meeting up at a hotel just to, you know, get together, you know. So I'm very interested to see where all this takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, love life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.